Well, this has been a very, very exciting week, and today is no exception, even though the stock was only up a little tiny bit. I am so glad to have Bradford Ferguson here to help me think about these things and potentially give me some wisdom that I might be lacking in some of these areas. Hi, Bradford.
Me wise. Yeah, let's talk a little Tesla and whatever else.
All right.
Looking
Well,
forward to it.
let's start with what everybody's talking about. Everybody in the community is interested, even though, of course, nobody's ever going to sell their stock. They still want it to go up, and it has been going up in a week when otherwise maybe people thought it would be going down. So it continued to inch up towards 200. Technicians are saying 220 is the big deal. Needs to get past that 220 mark, and then it could go to 300. But can it go to 300 given the huge PE that it currently has and the even bigger PE it's likely to have at the end of July? Anyway, those are a few thoughts that I have. I'll let you just talk about the stock and where it's going and what's happening. And what do you think?
Typically with stocks, their PE should be high when the earnings are low. And the PE should get lower as the PE should get lower as the earnings come up. So we've seen that with Nvidia. We see that with cyclical stocks. So when cyclical stocks kind of hit a high, the PE kind of compresses down, and Wall Street and the analysts kind of look forward to earnings coming down, like with the economic cycle, and then the PE goes up again.
I see.
So you can have stocks where the PE, for a boring stock that just grows with the economy, the PE can go between like 6 and 15 or something like that. So like it hits 15 when earnings have kind of dropped down to a low, and then strengths of 6 as they come all the way up. So I don't know. I'm skeptical about people saying, suddenly come to 300. There might be some kind of run leading up to the 8/8 event. Production hasn't been that great this quarter. Tesla's probably sold more than their production, so it'd be a great quarter for cash flow.
Yeah.
Curious to see if earnings have stabilized or maybe ticked up. So what Wall Street's going to do is look forward to earnings increasing for Tesla, assuming we firmed up, hit a bottom, and are increasing from here. So I think this is normal, but I think like the chartists and the people who are like, they get a little excited by every like 5 to 10% move.
Yeah.
I remember when I don't know. I think it was maybe the China thing, or there was good China numbers and the stock went to like 195, and everyone was calling for 220 back then. And I think it's just like a bit of psychology. So that's my read and thoughts on it.
Okay. Well, like some people, actually, including me, think that the narrative has changed. Boomer Mama posted today. She said she doesn't give a hoot about the unit volume anymore, and she thinks it's going to be it's all about the robots now, 4 wheels and two-legged robots, and that folks are going to be paying less attention to the quarter-to-quarter unit numbers of the cars.
Generally, it should be true. I mean, we've hit a soft patch where we had the early adopters, and then now there's this confusion about hybrids and EVs in the US with the early majority. So we're in that process of crossing the chasm where we've done the early adopters, and now we have the chasm before we get to the early majority. So yeah, I just kind of view it as like a pause before things continue. I think people eventually get it with EVs. They're just such a far superior product. So it for me, it's like we're in this time where people are having to be patient. We just have the Cybertruck, which is pretty awesome and exciting. But beyond that, Tesla's been pulling back a little bit. So the big creators of value are, potentially like solving or greatly improving self-driving. Even as like a really awesome driver assist, there's value there for Tesla. But if they could, make a huge leap toward autonomy, that'd be a huge value unlock. I think there's a lot of competition in humanoid robots, but I think Tesla will achieve a better scale. And Elon's talking about doubling and tripling the Megapack business. So curious to see when we see an uptick in the deployments.
Right, right.
Tesla does count the deployments before they are able to economically count the revenue. So curious when we see that.
Okay,
And that
so
doesn't have anything to do with units of cars, right?
no, it doesn't. No, all that stuff has nothing to do with units of cars. So, all right, let's talk about a couple of things. And one of which is my idea. I'm going to tell you straight up. This is nobody else is believing me, although I put out 3 videos now on it. Maybe you've seen what I've been saying, maybe you haven't. But I believe that what is actually happening right now with these lowered numbers, and if I'm right, it changes so much about our perception of the end of last year and the beginning of this year. I've been saying it for a while that the Model 3 refresh Osborne the Y. Okay. The Model 3 refresh came out. It was so much better than the old Model 3. And then everybody says, well, let's do it to the Y too. Oh, we're not going to do that now. Maybe next year, in 2025, we'll finally, do this refresh. I think that Osborne the Y, I've been talking about that for a very long time, but Tuesday, I had this crazy brain, I got attacked. My brain got attacked, and I had this idea that the Cybertruck is Osborning the Model Y. And I immediately got shot down. I said, well, okay, we got 2 million reservations. These are people that would have bought something from Tesla, probably. And if there was no such thing as a Cybertruck, they would have bought a Model Y, probably because it's kind of the closest thing to the Model Y. So I did a poll. And in the poll, it turned out that 40% of the people that were polled said if there was no such thing as a Cybertruck, they would have bought a Model Y. 33% of the people said they would have bought a Model 3. And 20% of the people polled said they would have bought a Model X. And only 8% said they would have bought a non-Tesla, something else. So that polling, and then as the
this is of people who bought a Cybertruck or
are waiting
waiting. Okay.
Yeah, waiting for a Cybertruck.
Yeah.
So I took that polling and I thought, okay, well, it was only 140 people. I don't have a big following on X. But 140 people, that's still not a bad, number to get a response from. And so then I thought, okay, let me think about the timing. When did Tesla sales start going down? When did they start having trouble? Right after the Model 3 refresh and was announced, and right after the Cybertruck videos started coming out, and both of them were being praised to the hills. And from that point, up until then, nobody was worried about the numbers. Up until July of last year, August of last year, everybody thought everything was fine. We'd be at 2 million, everything was good, and then all of a sudden it flatlined. And so what do you think of my theory?
I think there's some merit to it. Both the Cybertruck and the updated Model 3, is that what they call it?
Yeah.
Those are taking from other models. Certainly folks believe that Cybertruck is taking from the S and X.
Right.
But I could see what you're talking about, where people might not pony up for an S or X. They might be in the league of the Y, and
Mhm.
the
Yep.
Y is very affordable now.
Right.
Essentially after tax credit, I think is under $40,000,
Right
but
at,
above,
yeah, we looked at it.
without is it's 45 or a little more. And for the performance Y, it's
42.5, I think now,
yeah.
after the credit. Yeah.
So it's a big step up for the S and the X
Right.
for some people, but for something as beautiful in the eyes of many, not for some.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Some are getting used to it. For something as big, bold, and beautiful as Gary Black calls it, as a Cybertruck, I can see that where people would not step up to a S or X, but would for the Cybertruck.
Yeah. And
Uh,
that there, and it's not, and not even, I'm thinking not
and
even.
the upgraded Model 3, like if you don't want to end up with one, like you definitely don't want to test drive it.
Yeah.
At the Michigan Tesla summer meetup,
Yeah.
Tesla showed up and they were giving test drives for the new Model 3 performance, and
Yeah.
people were just blown away. But I got to try the new Model 3. It was around January,
Mhm.
and it was just it's so much more refined. The seats are like a Model S or X, but they're actually a little different.
Yeah.
Um, and I literally felt like I was wearing noise canceling headphones, and it was just much smoother ride than my
Sure.
Model Y.
Yeah.
Um, so it didn't feel like I was in a convertible, feeling every bump
Right.
on the road. Um, so I can see how people who are, educated about Tesla are holding off for an upgraded Model Y, or they're choosing the Cybertruck over the Model Y.
Right. So that could be a few 100,000 units, since you've got 2
Yeah.
million plus people waiting in line for the Cybertruck. And the main thing that this is, I mean, it's important that we might be losing a few 100,000 units over this. My estimate would be it might be as high as 500,000 units this year that are not being sold because they're waiting for a Cybertruck. But whatever the case is, whatever the number is not as critical as it is to think about what we've been blaming it on may not have been true at all.
Yeah.
So the economy, the interest rates, Elon bad, go down the list of the things that we've been blaming it on. Those things may have nothing to do with it, if in fact it's been this Osborne effect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that would be important in terms of going forward, to not be confused about what. Oh, and the big one would be that EVs are stalled out. Be the big one. If EVs are stalled out, well, you've got to have one strategy. If EVs aren't stalled out, well, that gives you a completely different strategy going forward. And of course,
Yeah.
a couple of people in some of the comments were saying, well, how does that explain China and Europe? And I said, well, they sell Model Ys in China and Europe too. And so the Model 3s would be affecting that as well, as people wait for the Model 3 or decide to go with the Model 3.
Yeah. People are
Well,
also blaming Hertz for, selling
right.
20, 30,000 Teslas. And what could also be happening with the Cybertruck and the upgraded 3 is Tesla owners may be trading those in
Yeah,
sooner than they would otherwise.
right.
So there's this, sudden supply of used Teslas.
Yep.
Um, and the source might not be exclusively Hertz.
That's right. That's exactly right. It will certainly be true in well, we're not 100% sure. We might put the
Yeah.
Model Y out to make money for us, as an Uber, but yet that's to be decided as 8.8 comes along and when we have our Cybertruck. All right. On another subject, Morgan Stanley's Adam Jonas put out a 10-pager today, a 10-page note on Optimus. Well, it was on robotics in general, robots in general, but it was pretty much, talking about Optimus as the key. They agreed that it's going to that probably initially the Optimus will cost $50,000 to $60,000 to make, but they also agreed that it should come down to about $10,000 in volume. So their analysis agreed with Elon on that. They have, but the thing that was crazy about it is they had the total number of bots, not just Optimus, but all bots. That by 2040, it would only be 8 million units.
8 million?
8 million, and by 2040. And I thought, that is crazy. They had it, see, and I'm sorry, that's 8 million by 2040? Wait, did this wrong? 2040. Anyway, whatever it was such a small number that it drove me nuts. It was like, expect Tesla alone to have more than 8 million by 2030. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm more in your camp. I'd be shocked if the bot isn't as quick and as useful as a human worker within the next couple of years at the latest. And if that's the case and it costs $50,000, then Tesla's going to sell a lot of these because, as we discussed last week, the value of one of these could easily be $500,000.
Yeah.
Just because they last bare minimum 5 years. Scott Walter would say like a lot of electric motors last for over a decade. So yeah, I have a hard time with it. Adam Jonas, like I'm glad he's like open-minded and like tries to connect the dots, but I remember in 2019 he said that the most units Tesla would ever sell in China in a given year was 71,000.
71,000.
Yeah. They do that in a month in China now.
Right.
I think.
Kind of a bad month. It's a good month is
Yeah.
79,000. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, well, yeah. So it was actually a good report. I highly recommend people take a look at the whole thing and just kind of read through it. There wasn't much new in there. They are now identifying, I think, 60 makers. Right around that.
Yeah, there's a lot of robot companies now.
Robot companies coming out. But they did think that Tesla had a pretty significant lead on multiple fronts in terms of their capabilities. So that was not a question in the article. But I did think that the total numbers was a real question mark in my mind. All right, let's see what else was going on today. Well, there was another piece of really, because this is Good News Thursday. There was another piece of really good news, and that was that the judge up in Baltimore, I guess it'd be up, no,
Delaware.
It's over in Delaware for you, up in Delaware for me, up and over. Anyway, Judge McCormick, said that she is going to reopen the case, and she asked both sides to provide their briefs based on the change, meaning the election and that we just went through. That she wants briefs prepared by the end of July, early August, because she wants to have a hearing on it and to schedule a date by late July or early August to hear the oral arguments.
Right. So late last week, Tesla filed to extend I guess it was around June 13th. They filed to extend and be able to file a brief about the case and in light of the shareholder re-ratification of Elon's pay package. And so, for her to, agree to hear it, I think that's a good sign. I'm not holding my breath yet, but it's a good sign. Warren Redlick said something interesting. He said, if the plaintiffs they're supposed to be representing the shareholders.
Right.
And the shareholders want to pay Elon.
Right.
And they've just expressed it again, even after getting all the extra disclosure and everything. So, if that's what the shareholders want, then the plaintiffs should drop their case, is what Warren Redlich is arguing. I don't know if he's going to file a motion or anything, but it's an interesting idea. It's like you need to represent your clients.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, of course, I think that I could be completely wrong on this, and I will bow to Warren on this, but I think that you can be, representing the minority shareholder. So the minority is saying that they don't think it was fair. I think in this particular case, what it should turn on, it should have, well, first of all, it should have never been decided the way it was decided. It was the worst, one of the worst. And I've seen probably thousands of cases. In law school, that's what you do. You read cases, and then you have to decide, were they well done, and what did you learn from that particular case? That's all you do for 3 years, is read cases, see how they're written, and et cetera, et cetera. This is probably the most poorly written legal result I've ever seen. Everything about it was just horrible. And I'm just saying that not as a Tesla fan. It just was a horribly misaligned activist way to come at something.
Yeah.
So
the judge did say also today, you shared with me that she's going to go ahead and hear the attorney's fee portion and do that before looking at the judgment already made. And that makes sense to me, because the attorney's briefs have already been filed for the attorney's fees.
Right.
So it makes sense, just from a timeline perspective, to go ahead and rule, okay, if it holds, then here's what the fees would be, and to do that while the attorneys are preparing their briefs for the in light of the re-ratification.
Right. And if I remember correctly, the plaintiffs have lowered their number in their brief to 1.1 billion from 5 billion or something on that order. And the defense is asking for fees, I want to say, on the level of 18 million. And I think that their basis of the 18 million is a reasonable hourly rate. Because the attorneys put in their how many hours they spent on it. And I think that is how the defense said, is that it should be a reasonable hourly rate. Part of the argument is that this was again a Warren Redlich argument. He said, well, you're arguing that Elon shouldn't get an oversized payday based on contingency. Well, then why should the lawyer get an oversized payday based on a contingency? So anyway,
and also the package. So they're going back in time to judge the board and the actions of Elon in 2018. So that's like the basis of the ruling. They said they had conflicts of interest that weren't disclosed, and it wasn't fair dealing. So if we're going back to 2018, the value of the pay package back then was 2.36 billion or something like that.
Yes.
So if you're going to do attorney's fees, do it on that value, not on suddenly the 2024 value or whatever, because like you're doing two different timelines here. You can't have the best of both worlds.
Exactly right. Well, okay. And then we had Spaces earlier today. A bunch of some of our favorite guys were on the Spaces, and Omar was on there, and he was being asked about 12.4.2 because he's been driving it, I think, for 10 days, 2 weeks now.
He's been driving .1, yeah.
Oh, he's on .1, you're right. He is expecting 12.4.2 to roll out possibly this weekend.
Wide or to more people?
Wide, yeah, wide.
Oh.
and he thinks wider than the 3.6 even.
And what was his basis? Was he saying .1 was already really good and
So
very safe?
he's saying .1 is amazing. He says game changing. Now he's usually exuberant, but he says the game changing part of it is not having the nag. It's now literally hands free. You don't have to put your hand ever on the steering wheel. So he says that's just completely game changing. I agree with him. It was the #1 reason I stopped using it, was the nag.
And I'm curious the calculus, because like the nag, the steering wheel nag, where you gotta jiggle it, and then sometimes you could jiggle it and knock it out of self-driving, and then you might not be ready for that. That can cause a safety issue in and of itself.
Yes.
So that's what Tesla needs to balance, is if for some reason 12.4 is less safe in some ways, the nag itself is less safe.
Right.
So hopefully you can have both, where it's the driving's more safe and you don't have the nag anymore.
Yeah, he says it's so good that he's basically almost at the level where he would feel comfortable taking a nap.
Wow.
That's how good he says.
That's great.
Now he is, again, Omar tends to be a little bit of a hyperbolizer.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see. But anyway, so he says, yes, it's good. It's being rolled out to the internal people at Tesla right now. He thinks it's going to be rolling out to the wider first round people, like the employees for Tesla, all of the employees of Tesla over the next day or two. And he says if that goes well, then he expects it possibly even this weekend to be rolled out wide. So that would be pretty exciting.
When we first got 12.3, it came out in stages of a couple days. It was like the employees were on Tuesday, Omar and some others were like Thursday, and then another group was Saturday. I got it on a Saturday as I was like going through Salt Lake City, doing my road trip, and then another batch got it two days later on Monday or Tuesday. And then I kept going from there. So yeah, it'd be great if that happens, so we can get our hands on it, see what it's like, and Tesla can get that feedback.
Yeah. So that, again, he feels that the new deal that Tesla has made now, Elon said they're going to allow 2 weeks of free testing after each major update. He feels like that because it's hands-free, that if they get that 2-week trial, he thinks that the uptake would be substantially more, that there'll be a very noticeable increase in the number of people that will buy it or subscribe to it.
Yeah.
Just because of it being hand-free. Just feels that that's enough of a change.
I was giving my mom a try at FSD in my Tesla, so she was in the driver's seat, and the nag was the biggest problem.
There you go.
So that, and she was looking at the road. So I think it is a big change. It would be an improvement. And my mom's over 80 years old, and it's the nag is a problem for her.
Yeah. Well, I'm way younger than your mom. I'm only 76. And the nag is a problem for me. So, all right. So then economically today, we had some pretty soft kinds of news. We had a fairly high unemployment first-time unemployment, but an increasing 2-week number. That's where I pay attention. The 2-week number was up again. The people that are still unemployed after a week. We had very much lower numbers on home sales, even though the prices are still going up nicely. But the numbers were way off in terms of home sales this month.
And the day before we had weak GDP numbers. The consumer was weak in the first quarter. Personal consumption was the growth rate was down quarter over quarter. So it's like half of what it was in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, so we're looking at a bunch of soft information. There's still positive stuff out there. Any update on your thinking about whether the third quarter will literally be the GDP will be, slightly under, or maybe even more than slightly under last year?
Not really, but there are further signs of stress where you look at unemployment and averages of unemployment, and California has already rolled over to recession territory.
All right.
And it's it is a limited sample size, but like every time this has happened, it's been a sign of recession.
Well, California isn't really a limited sample size because it's the fifth largest economy in the world.
Well, what's a limited sample size is
No,
like the number of recessions we've had.
Oh, I see. Okay, that.
Yeah, it's that's limited.
Yeah.
As a signal.
Right. I'm sorry. Okay.
It is a very big and important economy.
Yeah. Bigger than Germany and France now, I think. It's a fifth in the world. Maybe past Japan. It was going to pass Japan, and Japan's been not doing well. I don't know. All right. Well, that's interesting. So you're not sure still. So
there's a lot of complacency in the stock market.
Yeah.
Nvidia's rolled over a little bit. We're seeing there's this thing in people who study volatility and stock options where correlation between a lot of stocks is near zero. Normally stocks are highly correlated with each other.
I see.
But the correlation between stocks is very low. And to me, that it shows like there's different winners and losers, and we're seeing a lot of this, but also we're seeing a lot of complacency. Normally, when people are a little fearful, the indexes and stocks tend to move together more.
I see.
So there's a big lack of fear in the stock market, in my opinion, and that concerns me.
Yes.
Like,
hey, you and I are on the same page on that one.
Yeah, I want to get a little fearful when others aren't fearful.
That's exactly right.
It's not quite how Warren Buffett puts it, but
it's similar. It's not dissimilar. So everything seems a little stretched. I've been saying that now for weeks. I think there's definitely an opportunity for a 10 to 20% pullback. And the funny part about it is, I can remember it was it was before the 2008 problem. My house, the house that I used to live, my rental now, had crossed over $1 million in value. I looked at it and I said to anybody that would listen, I said, my house isn't worth $1 million, but I will be thrilled if there's only a 20% pullback. Of course, in 2008, it was a 55% pullback.
Wow.
But now it's back up well over that number, but now it's worth it. Okay. But anyway, the point is, when I see the market being stretched this much and think in terms of a 10 to 20% pullback, it really isn't significant because the people have made so much money on the way up. So portfolio has gone up 35% or something in the last, the average portfolio is probably up 35% over the last 6 months. If you have a 20% pullback, you're still up 15% for the year. So it wouldn't be crazy to see that kind of a pullback.
If you've been tech heavy, I agree with that, but the S&P isn't up nearly that much. And a lot of people are diversified where they own small caps and they have international, and small caps and international have done really poorly compared to the S&P, and they've been a disaster compared to tech stocks.
So what do you think? If the market pulled back 20%, wouldn't it likely be heavily the techs that would get hit since they've had the bigger run up? And you wouldn't necessarily see as much of a pullback in the mid caps and the small caps?
that's what I would expect because people piled into those names.
Right.
I've heard stories of people's moms calling them. Have you heard of Nvidia? I've heard it's they're doing really good. Could you buy me some? Or maybe it's their partner they hear from.
Right.
And generally that when people come out of the woodwork and are asking about a specific
Yeah.
investment,
Yeah.
that tends to be a high in the market. Now, I think Nvidia is going to have a phenomenal year this year,
Oh.
and they're going to improve on this year next year.
Mhm.
But when you see like everyone suddenly going in one direction, it makes me nervous. It's kind of like when you see the gold ATM or the Bitcoin ATM.
Yes.
If
Yes.
we saw an Nvidia ATM, I wouldn't be surprised.
So we have big headline days in the stock market and in the economy. Tomorrow is one of those days because the PCE comes out tomorrow, and there is the ability. I understand that there's actually some technical ways, some what do you call it, formulaic ways that you can take the CPI and the PPI and somehow get pretty dang close on predicting the PCE. But I haven't been doing that. Are you aware that that's possible, or is that something that maybe I read and
I haven't heard that theory
never heard
yet,
that?
but
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's something to it.
So the PCE tomorrow, so the stock market today was flat. So if those people know way more about it and they know the formula, they weren't loading up or getting out.
Hmm.
My theory would be that tomorrow's PCE will be a no surprise PCE. What do you think?
No, I had no clue.
Okay. Well, then let's not go any deeper. Okay. So, so, and of course it will be heavily dependent on how the debates turn out tonight. So I'm kidding, of course.
I think the market generally may already be heading toward assuming some kind of Trump win. Um, Trump's ahead in several swing states allegedly. Um, so I think like people are beginning to think that's going to happen.
The betting is heavily that way.
Yeah. So if Trump had a really bad debate, then maybe that could shake things up.
Yeah, it's true.
But generally people don't change their minds from a
Not that,
debate. They just dig in a little more, right?
right. Yeah. And of course, then there's a second debate. And my guess is, I was thinking about this today. Maybe other people have said it. My guess is that Trump said okay to everything on these two debates. This debate and the ABC debate. He agreed to everything. He said, yeah, fine. Okay, whatever. We'll do it your way. My guess is after the end of the two debates, if he feels like he wants it or feels like he could benefit from it, he's going to say, look, I agreed to everything for the first two. It's your turn. Here's what I would like to see.
Uh-huh.
The third debate. So, and then how do you say no to that? If you lay down all the rules on the first two debates, how do you say no to letting the other guy have all of his rules on the third debate? Anyway, that's just my theory. I have lots of theories. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
All right. Tesla was up $1.05 today. The Dow was up 36 whole points. NASDAQ was up 53 and the S&P was up $5. Actually, $4.97 for those who are very technical. And the Tesla is up exactly 0 at this point. But my 0 is at red. So somehow this particular 0 is down. Sometimes don't you see the 0 being green? And my 0. Now my 0 just turned to green. Maybe it's directionality.
Oh, my 0 is black on Yahoo Finance.
So,
I missed it. I was going to take a screenshot. It's normally not unch, right?
That's right. So now Tesla is up a penny in the after hour. All right, so let's go look at, well, see, first of all, let's look at the Mag 7. The Mag 7 today, Amazon was up nicely, Meta up nicely, and Nvidia was actually down what used to be $24, now $2.41. So mostly up all the way. Actually, Nvidia, the only Mag 7 that was down. Thoughts on any of the Mag 7 or what's happening with them, or should I just go on?
Yeah, the Mag 7, we looked at it over the past 5 quarters. So this was including the first quarter and then the 4 quarters before that.
Yeah.
And the Mag 7, if you just separate them out, they had done over 100 and like 15% or something like that, cumulatively over those quarters. The rest of the S&P, so the 494, did 17%. So if you didn't own the Mag 7, your performance was like 80% lower or more. So the Mag 7 has been 80+% or more of the performance of the market, and I don't think that's a healthy thing. Some companies are deserving of it. Like,
right.
I do think Nvidia is deserving of it.
Right.
I just don't think it's undervalued anymore. That's just our opinion.
Right.
So yes, it's just what's been going on. So like if you have been heavy in Tesla, or if you've been heavy if you not really own the Mag 6,
right.
so the Mag 7 minus Tesla, then it's been like a pretty boring or disappointing year so far.
Right. Absolutely true. The 10-year in the pre-market is down 0.4 basis point at 428. So my new number, my new plus minus number is 425. That's where I'm kind of judging how the 10-year is doing. So right now it's above that. The 2-year, same thing exactly in the pre-market, and the 2-month, actually the opposite, up 0.4 basis point. So the 2-year.
So I have an idea on why the inversion.
Oh, yay!
Why we could stay inverted even if we don't have a recession.
Oh, okay.
So with what's going on with AI and with other investment, there's a pretty hardcore demand for money right now. People are following different investments and making investments in the economy, etc. But folks are more uncertain about what that picture is going to look like in 10 years. And because of that uncertainty, the rate's lower on the 10-year.
I see.
So I wonder if it's a sign for like the demand for money, and people think the demand for money or for loans is high right now, and that their uncertainty it makes them think that'll be lower in the future.
Okay. All right.
Because like we've had the longest inversion ever without a recession.
Yes.
And maybe that would be a reason why it would make sense to stay in place.
Yeah, and we've actually started now the inversion is dropping a little between the 10-year and the 2-year, but the 2-month is actually widening. So it never ceases to amaze me how many different ways this inversion can work out. And maybe, I mean, it hasn't been a perfect indicator ever, but even its imperfection, this is the worst. But maybe as we've pointed out, maybe there's foundational changes, fundamental changes with the amount of wealth that's now held by people over 55 compared to the rest of the economy, with the amount of wealth that's held in homes now at this point. Never before have we seen, over 40% of the homeowners have paid off their mortgages. There's just so many different things happening that it's hard to know if all the stuff that we've used in the past will still be the right way to judge it in the future.
Yeah.
All right.
And I would say, boomers who were expected to retire, a lot of them didn't have enough to retire.
Right.
So I'm curious if they're working longer than demographics experts, predicted.
Yes.
I'd be curious about that. So if anybody tracks that, drop it in the comments. Love to hear about it.
I'll give you one to track. So I can't remember who had this on X the other day, but the S&P 140 of the S&P 500 have had profit increases of 25% or more.
Mm-hmm.
Now that group, you would think would also be getting way more of the advantage in this particular run-up than the ones that maybe had no earnings increase or had 5% or 10% earnings increase. But the person who gave me the first stat didn't give me the rest of the stat. So
Yeah.
I'm unclear on that, but I'm wondering if that was even a true stat. It was interesting if 1/3, just under 1/3 of the entire S&P 500 has increases of 25% or more. That would be significant as well.
But we've also seen over the last 3 years, earnings have been flat
Overall.
in the S&P 500, and it's only been buybacks and people looking forward to potential earnings increases in the future that have really driven it.
Yeah.
That really shocked me.
Yeah, that is really shocking. So oil continues higher and higher. It's at 81.88 now for Texas Intermediate. Brent is unch in the pre-market at 86.39. Natural gas up again today. It has been falling for the last couple of days, but now back up at 270, up 0.56. Gold rebounded after a big fall off for a couple of days, back up to 338.
So the natural gas was up 0.56%, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
In the pre-market, yes.
So not 56 cents.
No, 1.5 cents.
Okay, 1.5 cents. Okay.
$2.70 a cubic, whatever that is, I forget. Gold up a little bit, back to 2,338. That's been where it's been, but man, it really had a fall off and then it came right back. Silver up a little in the pre-market, close to unchanged. Copper is unchanged. Bitcoin has been bouncing all around the 60,000 level as opposed to the 70,000 level. So way down. It is up 743 for the day at 61,591, which is better than the 59,000 it was over the weekend. Thoughts on Bitcoin and what's going on there?
So the rumor is it's the lawyers or the trustees of Mt. Gox selling because there were customer funds got locked up, and Neil Karpelez or whoever was running that Mt. Gox, like he tried to run away with the money. I don't know what the truth is, but like there's these assets that the trustees have, and they're giving them back to the customers in the form of cash. So instead of giving them Bitcoin, they're giving them proceeds from the sale of the Bitcoin. So that's the excuse why Bitcoin has come down quite a bit, is that these trustees are just pounding the supply onto the market day after day to liquidate these assets for their charges for the people that they're working for.
Interesting. I'm glad I asked.
I don't know if that's the truth, but it seems plausible.
The dollar is down a bit. The Japanese yen had recovered a bit, but looking like it's down again in the pre-market. Japanese banks were supposed to come in and save the yen again, but they haven't. So are you paying any attention to that part of the world, or?
Well, it's going to be tricky for other governments now because I don't know if Japan lowered rates, but Canada did, Europe did. And when they do that, their currency is going to
Right.
depreciate because people are looking at the dollar, they're looking at the higher interest rate in the US, and they can do stuff with the currency to go over and buy, US government bonds and protect themselves against the currency changes. So, they're having to face a choice of whether they protect their currency or not.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And the Japan overall economy has been flatlined for a long, long time. After we thought they were going to take over the world.
About 40 years. Yeah, there were songs about turning Japanese.
Yeah, right. They were buying up all of the Hawaiian Island. Well, actually, I guess it was mostly just Oahu, but and all the golf courses.
Yeah.
What a difference a couple of decades makes. Okay, the equities. Dow Jones up 36 or 0.09. S&P up $4.97 or 0.09%. And the NASDAQ up 53.53 or 0.30. So it looks like the equities are feeling good about tomorrow in the pre-market, or at least a little good.
Yep.
Okay.
Just about unched.
Just
in
about,
my opinion.
yeah, not a very
Less than 0.5% move, I don't think is a big deal.
Do you as a stock as somebody who's in the business, do you pay much attention to the pre-market?
I'll look at it in the morning.
Okay.
So you've had like more chance for news to come out, some reactions to things. Typically the closing marks are fairly significant every day because there can be a lot of volume
Right.
on the close. There's a lot of market on close orders that can happen.
Yeah.
But then you have some news and people want to make changes the next day. So I tend to pay attention more in the morning.
Mhm. Okay, I might have more questions like that in the future because get inside the brain of someone who's actually getting paid to help people make their decisions.
Yeah.
All right. Anything you're passionate about at this moment in time that I didn't cover on the show so far?
I don't think so. People want to find out more about me. I know this is your job, but they can go to rebellionaire.com. We help people who are have a all-in position on Tesla or Nvidia or even Lilly.
Oh, okay.
So we can help out those folks because typically if you go to an advisor, they force you to sell your all in if they're going to give you advice.
Yeah.
So they take this rather hardline stance, and we don't force our clients to do that.
Yes. Well, seems like a very wise direction to take, and it's apparently working out well for you. So,
Yeah.
all right then. Well, in an hour, in an hour from when you and I are putting this together, we'll all be watching the debate. We'll see in the morning how that might have impacted markets. You guys can check me. I'll be telling you all about it tomorrow morning at about 7:40 California time. All right. Thank you so much, as always, Bradford, for coming on board, and to all of you out there. It's been great talking to you.